I bought a galactic cruiser. No one dared bid on what I found inside Rewrote Interstellar History Part 2. The ghosts, the inside of the ship was wrong in ways that Do-hyun could not explain. He walked through corridors that curved and twisted like the inside of a living creature. The ceiling was too high, the walls too smooth, and everywhere he looked, there were strange shapes built into the metal. Some looked like windows, but showed only darkness. Others looked like doors, but had no handles or controls. And yet the ship guided him. Every time he approached a junction, one path would light up brighter than the others. Every time he hesitated, the lights behind him would dim, pushing him forward. It was as if the ship was a sleeping giant slowly opening its eyes, curious about the small creature that had wandered into its belly. "The architecture is insane," he muttered into his cum, hoping Yuna could still hear him somewhere through the static. "It looks like someone tried to build a temple inside a warship. There are carvings everywhere, patterns that repeat over and over. I have never seen anything like this." His scanner showed no life signs, no power readings. According to his equipment, the ship was completely dead, but the lights kept turning on ahead of him. After what felt like hours of walking, Do-hyun found himself standing before a massive door. It was different from the others, covered in symbols that glowed faintly gold. As he approached, the door split down the middle and slid open without a sound. The room beyond was a medical bay. He could tell from the beds and the strange equipment hanging from the ceiling. But what caught his attention was not the machine's dot, it was the bodies. Dozens of figures stood around the room, frozen in place like statues. They were humanoid, with 2 arms and 2 legs and faces that looked almost human. Each one was encased in some kind of crystal, their eyes closed, their expressions peaceful. Do-hyun approached the nearest one, a tall man with broad shoulders and scars on his face. According to his scanner, the man was dead. No heartbeat, no brain activity, no signs of life at all. But the crystal was warm to the touch. He moved through the room, examining each figure. They wore armor that seemed to grow from their skin rather than being put on. Their weapons, still clutched in their hands, were unlike anything he had ever seen. Everything about them spoke of advanced technology, far beyond what the consortium possessed. And then he found her dot. She stood in the center of the room, separated from the others by a ring of golden light. She was smaller than the rest, with sharp features and short dark hair, and an expression that was not peaceful at all. She looked angry, even in sleep. Her eyes were open. They tracked him as he approached. Do-hyun stumbled backward, his heart slamming against his chest. "Yuna! One of them is alive. The crystal, it is not killing them, it is preserving them. One of them is watching me." Static crackled in his ear, but no response came. The woman's lips moved. At first, no sound came out. Then the ship itself seemed to vibrate, and a voice filled the room. It spoke in perfect Korean, as if the ship had reached into his mind and pulled out his native language. "You are not them." Do-hyun froze. "You are new, small, fragile." The woman studied him through her crystal prison. "But you came. 47 others bought this ship before you. 47 others fled the moment they saw us. You walked deeper instead." Why? His mouth was dry. His hands were shaking. But Park Do-hyun had not survived 20 years in the salvage business by running away from strange situations. "I'm a salvage dealer," he said. "I bought your ship at auction. Legally, it belongs to me now." Something that might have been amusement crossed the woman's face. "Then you own the tomb of the architects, little creature. Congratulations." The crystal around her began to crack, tiny lines spreading across its surface like ice breaking in spring. "I am Shin Yoonji, last soldier of Earth's first empire. And you are very, very far from home." The words hit him like a physical blow. "Earth? You are from Earth? You are human?" I was human before your species crawled out of caves for the second time. The cracks in the crystal grew larger, and Do-hyun could see her fingers starting to move. I was human before the consortium species rose from the mud we lifted them from. I was human before they betrayed us and burned our worlds to ash. I do not understand. Humans only developed space travel 100 years ago. We only joined the galactic community 30 years ago. What you are saying is impossible. Nothing is impossible, little brother. The crystal shattered. Eung fell forward, catching herself on her hands and knees. She coughed, and something black came out of her mouth. Her body shook as muscles that had been frozen for ages remembered how to move. Do-hyun did not know what to do. Part of him wanted to run. Part of him wanted to help her. He stood paralyzed between the two choices until she raised her head and looked at him with eyes that had seen stars born and die. "How long?" she asked. "What? How long have I been asleep? The ship was supposed to wake me when one of my children found me, but the signal." She looked around the room at the other frozen figures. "How long?" Do-hyun checked his equipment, looking for any way to answer her question. The ship's internal clock was still running, and when he found the number, his blood turned to ice. 600,000 years, he whispered. Eung closed her eyes. For a long moment, she did not move or speak. When she opened her eyes again, they were wet, but her voice was steady. "Then everyone I knew is dead. Every world I protected is gone. Every memory I held dear exists now only in this ship." She pushed herself to her feet, swaying slightly. "But you found me, little salvager. A human found me. That means our plan worked." "What plan? What are you talking about?" She walked past him toward a console that rose from the floor at her approach. Her fingers danced across controls that glowed at her touch. 600,000 years ago, the species you call the consortium attacked us. They were our children, the civilizations we had raised from nothing. We taught them everything they knew, and they repaid us by trying to wipe us from existence. The console showed images now, ships and planets and battles that made modern warfare look like children fighting with sticks. We could have destroyed them. We had the power, but we could not kill our own children, even when they were killing us. So what did you do? We hid. She turned to face him, and in her ancient eyes, he saw something that looked almost like hope. We scattered our survivors across the galaxy, wiped their memories, reduced them to primitives. We gave them a chance to grow again, far from the eyes of their betrayers. Earth was one of those hiding places, little brother. You are not the first humans. You are the second. And I have been waiting 600,000 years for you to find your way back to the stars." She extended her hand toward him. "Welcome home, Park Do-hyun. We have much work to do. I bought a galactic cruiser. No one dare bid on what I found inside Rewrote Interstellar. History Part 1. The auction. A salvage yard floated in space like a graveyard made of metal and broken dreams. Thousands of dead ships hung in the darkness above a giant planet made entirely of gas. Some ships were small, no bigger than a house. Others were massive, stretching for kilometers. Their hulls torn open by ancient battles that nobody remembered anymore. Park Do-hyun stood in the auction hall and tried not to look scared. He was a small man from Earth, from the Korean Peninsula, and he had spent his entire life savings just to be here. His translation chip was old and sometimes made mistakes. His environment suit had patches on the patches. The aliens around him were tall and strange and looked at him like he was a bug that had wandered into their kitchen. Humanity had only been allowed into galactic trade for 30 years. Most alien species still thought humans were primitive, stupid, and not worth their time. Do-hyun had felt their judgment from the moment he stepped off his tiny cargo ship, but he had not come here to make friends. He had come for one thing, only. Lot 7749. The ship appeared on the giant screen above the auction stage. and Do-hyun felt his heart beat faster. She was old. Incredibly old. Her hull was 2 kilometers long, covered in scars from weapons that had not been used for thousands of years. Her name and origin had been erased from every record. The only information listed was unknown, pre-consortium IRA. The auctioneer was a Volith, a species with 4 arms and 6 eyes and skin that looked like wet leather. He seemed nervous as he announced the lot. Lot 7749, derelict vessel. Salvage rights only. We will begin at 50,000 credits. Nobody moved. Do-hyun looked around the hall. It was packed with hundreds of beings from dozens of species. The biggest salvage companies in the galaxy were here. The Korath delegation alone could buy small planets for fun. Yet every single one of them stood perfectly still, their eyes fixed on the floor or the ceiling or anywhere except the screen. 40,000, the auctioneer tried. Silence. 20,000. A Velith merchant started to raise his tentacle, then stopped. He shook his head and stepped backward, bumping into the being behind him. 10,000 credits. The auctioneer's voice was cracking now. I am authorized to go as low as 5,000 for immediate removal. Please, someone must take this vessel. Do-hyun's translator Chip picked up whispers from the crowd around him. Go ship. Cursed vessel. The silent tomb. 47 buyers in 600 years. And every single one had either disappeared forever or returned to ship within days. Refusing to speak about what they had seen inside, he raised his hand. Every eye in the hall turned to look at the small human in the cheap suit. The auctioneer blinked all 6 of his eyes in surprise. The human bids 5,000 credits. Does anyone wish to sold? The auctioneer spoke so fast his words blurred together. The vessel is yours. Remove it immediately. Today. Now. Do-hyun walked toward the payment terminal, feeling hundreds of alien stares burning into his back. His earpiece crackled with the voice of his business partner, Kim Yuna, who was still aboard their cargo hauler in orbit. Have you completely lost your mind? She demanded. I ran that ship's signature through every database I could find. 47 buyers, Do-hyun. 47. The last one was a Korath warlord with a private army. And he returned the ship after 6 hours, looking like he had seen his own death. I know, Do-hyun said quietly, uploading his payment. Then why? Why would you spend everything we have on a ship that terrifies the entire galaxy? He paused at the airlock that would take him to his new purchase. Through the small window, he could see the ancient vessel waiting in the darkness, her hull darker than the space around her. Because I ran the signature through one more database, he said. One that the consortium does not know humans can access. What database? What are you talking about? The ship is not pre-consortium, Yuna. He took a deep breath. She is pre-galactic. She's older than every known spacefaring civilization in the galaxy. Older than the Velith, older than the Korath, older than the consortium itself. Yuna was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. That is impossible. The oldest ships in existence are maybe 50,000 years old. What you are describing would be hundreds of thousands of years. Maybe more. Do-hyun placed his hand on the airlock control. Everyone else ran away because they did not understand what they found. But I think I do. And I think it is something humanity needs to see. The airlock opened with a hiss of ancient air. Beyond it, a docking tube stretched into darkness, leading to the ship that had terrified the galaxy for 6 centuries. Do-hyun stepped inside. The tube was cold. Colder than space should be, and completely dark, except for the small light on his helmet. His footsteps echoed strangely, as if the ship was much bigger than it appeared. As he walked, he noticed something that made his skin crawl. The walls were covered in writing dot. It was faded, almost invisible, but his helmet light caught the edges of symbols carved into the metal. They were not Vela symbols, not Korath, not any language his translator could identify. But something about them felt familiar, like a word on the tip of his tongue that he could not quite remember. He reached the end of the docking tube and stood before the ship's main airlock. It was sealed, covered in dust so thick it looked like gray snow. Nobody had opened this door in a very long time. Do-hyun reached out and touched the control panel. The dust fell away. The panel lit up with soft blue light. And then, slowly, the airlock began to open. What he saw inside made him forget how to breathe. The corridor beyond was not dead. Emergency lights flickered on as he watched, one by one, stretching into the distance like a path being lit just for him. The air was cold but breathable. The walls were smooth and clean, as if someone had been maintaining them just yesterday. The ship was waking up. "Yuna," he whispered into his comm. "I think the ship knows I am here." Static was his only answer. He was alone now, cut off from everything he knew. Standing at the entrance of a mystery older than civilization itself, Park Do-hyun, salvage dealer from Earth, stepped aboard humanity's greatest discovery, and the darkness swallowed him whole. "I bought a galactic cruiser no one dare bid on. What I found inside Rewrote Interstellar. History Part 3. The archive 3 days passed, and Park Do-hyun learned that everything he knew about the galaxy was a lie. Shin Yoonji moved through the ancient ship like a ghost returning to a home it had forgotten. Her fingers touched walls and doors and controls, and wherever she went, the ship came alive. Systems that had slept for 600,000 years woke at her command. Lights that had been dark since before the consortium existed blazed with golden fire. The ship's name was Eternal Dawn, and she was not a simple cruiser. She was an ark, a fortress, a library containing the complete history of a human civilization that had once ruled 1,000 worlds. Yuna had finally managed to dock her small cargo hauler with the Eternal Dawn after the ship's awakening cleared the interference blocking communications. Now she sat on the command deck, her face pale and her hands shaking as she read through files that rewrote everything humanity believed about itself. "We called ourselves the First Kindred," Yoonji explained. She stood before a holographic display that showed the galaxy as it had been hundreds of thousands of years ago. Stars were marked with symbols Do-hyun was beginning to recognize as ancient Korean. "We achieved faster than light travel 800,000 years ago, long before any other species in this galaxy left their home planets." 800,000 years, Yuna repeated. Her voice was hollow. The consortium history books say that galactic civilization began 50,000 years ago with the Veloth. They say humans are newcomers, primitive beings who only recently developed intelligence. The consortium history books are lies. Yoonji's voice was hard. Lies they have told for so long that even they believe them now. But the truth is simple. We found them. All of them. The Veloth, the Korath, every founding species of their precious consortium. We found them when they were still living in caves, still afraid of fire, still believing that the stars were lights hung by their gods. She waved her hand, and the holographic display changed. Now it showed humans in simple white clothing standing before crowds of primitive aliens, teaching them, guiding them, lifting them up. We gave them science, mathematics, philosophy, art, medicine. Yoonji's eyes were fixed on the images. We asked nothing in return except peace. We believed that knowledge should be shared, that all intelligent species deserved a chance to reach for the stars. "What happened?" Do-hyun asked. He had been quiet for hours, trying to absorb everything he was seeing. "Why did they attack you?" "Fear." The word came out like poison. As our children grew stronger, they began to fear us. We were too powerful, too advanced. They could not understand how we could have so much and not use it to control them. They assumed that one day we would enslave them, so they decided to strike first. The display showed a new image now. Ships filling the sky. Cities burning. Human worlds turned to ash by weapons that the first kindred had helped their children build. The war lasted 200 years. We could have won. Our technology was so far beyond ours that it would have been like adults fighting infants. Yoonji's hands clenched into fists. But how do you kill your own children? How do you destroy the civilizations you created with your own hands? We could not do it. We retreated again and again, hoping they would stop, hoping they would remember what we had given them. But they did not stop, Yuna said quietly. No, they chased us to the edge of the galaxy and beyond. They burned every world we tried to hide on. They killed billions of us. Yoonji closed her eyes. In the end, the elders made a choice. We could not destroy our children, but we could save ourselves. We gathered the survivors, wiped their memories, and scattered them across the galaxy on hidden worlds. We reduced them to primitives, to cave dwellers, to being so simple that our children would never think to look for them. Earth, Do-yoon breathed. That is why humanity developed on Earth. We were hidden there. One of 12 refuge worlds. The only one where the seed took root and grew. Yoonji opened her eyes and looked at him. For 600,000 years, our children have ruled this galaxy, believing they destroyed us. They built their consortium on our graves. They teach their young that they are the oldest and wisest beings in existence. And all this time, humanity has been quietly growing, reaching for the stars again, just as we always have. Yuna stood up suddenly, her chair scraping against the floor. What do we do with this? If the consortium finds out, they will destroy us. They have spent 600,000 years burying this history. They will not let modern humans reveal the truth. They are already afraid, Yoonji said. Why do you think no one would buy this ship? Every species in the consortium carries deep in their genetic memory the image of beings like us. Tall and strange and impossibly powerful. They tell stories about us in their oldest myths. They call us the architects, the builders, the ghost parents. And every time one of them boards this ship, that ancient memory wakes up and screams at them to run. But we did not run, Do-hyun said. No. For the first time, Yoonji smiled. You walked into the dark, little brother. Just as the first kindred always did. Just as we always will. She turned back to the console and began entering commands. The ship hummed around them, systems coming online that had been dormant for ages beyond counting. What are you doing? Yuna asked. The Eternal Dawn is not alone. 17 other Orcs are hidden across the galaxy, each carrying soldiers of the first kindred in crystalline sleep. They have been waiting, just as I have been waiting, for one of our children to find us. Yoonji's fingers moved faster across the controls. Now that you have woken me, I can wake them. 300 warriors with technology that makes consortium weapons look like toys. And then what? War? Do-yoon felt fear rising in his chest. He had not asked for any of this. He was a salvage dealer, not a soldier. Yoonji paused and looked at him. Her expression softened slightly. The first kindred tried to be parents to the galaxy, and our children murdered us for it. Perhaps the second kindred can be something different. Perhaps you can be equals, partners, proof that humanity endures no matter what the universe throws at us. She reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. I do not want revenge, Park Do-yoon. I want justice. I want the truth to be known. And I want to see what your generation will become. Alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed on every console. What is happening? Yuna shouted. Eung turned back to the display, her expression hardening. We have been found. 12 consortium warships just dropped out of hyperspace. They are scanning us. Do-hyun looked at the display and felt his stomach drop. The ships surrounding them were massive, bristling with weapons, their hulls marked with the symbols of the Veloth High Command. "Can we escape?" he asked. Yunji laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. Escape. She pressed a control, and the Eternal Dawn shuddered as ancient weapon systems powered up for the first time in 600,000 years. "Little brother, we are not going to escape. We are going to remind these children who taught them to reach for the stars." The display showed the consortium ships stopping their advance, their weapon locks faltering as sensors tried and failed to classify what they were seeing. "First, we wake the others," Yunji said. "And then we go home." I bought a galactic cruiser no one dare bid on, what I found inside Rewrote Interstellar History Part 4. The Awakening, the consortium warships did not attack. They hung in space like nervous animals. Their weapons charged, but not firing. Their sensors screaming warnings that none of their officers could understand. The Eternal Dawn was impossible. Her power readings were off every known scale. Her hull was made of materials that their computers could not identify. And worst of all, she was moving toward them without any visible engines, sliding through space like a knife through water. Du Haiyan watched from the command deck as the alien fleet slowly retreated. He could see their communication lights flashing wildly as they called for reinforcements that would never arrive in time. "They are scared," he said. "Really scared. They should be." Yunji did not look up from her console. The Eternal Dawn was a command ship designed to fight entire fleets alone. What they are facing now is like a child with a stick facing an armored warrior with a laser cannon. "Are you going to destroy them?" She finally looked at him, and her expression was unreadable. "Do you want me to?" The question hung in the air. Do-hyun thought about everything he had learned in the past 3 days. The genocide, the lies, the 600,000 years of humanity being erased from history. Part of him wanted to say yes. Part of him wanted to watch the descendants of his ancestors' killers burn. But a larger part of him remembered his father, a simple salvage dealer who had taught him that the measure of a person was not what they did when they were strong, but what they did when they had power over others. "No," he said. "Let them go." Yunji smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it was real. "You are a good man, Park Do-hyun. Better than most of the first kindred were in the end." She entered a command, and the Eternal Dawn slowed. The consortium ships took the opportunity to flee, jumping to hyperspace so fast they left energy trails that lit up the darkness. "They will be back," Yuna said. She had been quiet for hours, studying the ship's databases, learning everything she could about the technology they now possessed. "They will bring more ships. They will bring everything they have. Let them." Yunji stood and stretched, her ancient body still stiff from 600,000 years of sleep. "By the time they organize a response, we will have woken the other arcs. And then the balance of power in this galaxy will shift forever." They spent the next weeks traveling across consortium space. The Eternal Dawn was fast beyond anything Do-hyun had ever imagined. She could cross entire star systems in hours, moving through hyperspace like it was water, and she was a fish born to swim. Wherever they went, the consortium forces fled before them, and at each hidden location, they found another arc. The first was buried in an asteroid field at the edge of explored space. Its guardian was a man named Kan Seung-ho, a warrior with kind eyes and hands that had killed thousands in the ancient war. He wept when he learned how long he had slept, and then laughed when he saw that humans had found their way back to the stars. The second was frozen in the ice of a dead moon. The third was drifting in the void between galaxies. The fourth, fifth, sixth, and more, scattered across creation like seeds waiting for spring. Each awakening was the same. Ancient warriors opened their eyes to a galaxy they no longer recognized. They mourned for what was lost. And then they looked at Do-hyun and Yuna. These small, fragile humans who had come so far, and they felt hope for the first time in ages beyond counting dot by the time they reached the 17th arc. They had gathered an army of 300 soldiers of the First Kindred. Their ships were old but powerful, their weapons beyond anything the Consortium could match. They could conquer the galaxy if they chose to, but that was not why they had come to this particular place. The 17th arc was hidden in a region of space that the Consortium called the Forbidden Zone. It was a system that no one was allowed to enter, protected by automated defenses and ancient warnings. The Consortium told its citizens that the area was dangerous, filled with radiation and unstable stars. They lied. The truth was much worse. The Doyun stood on the surface of a dead world and felt sick. The ground beneath his feet was glass, fused by heat so intense that it had melted stone. The sky above was empty, no atmosphere, no clouds, just endless black dotted with stars that seemed to mock him with their beauty. This was New Seoul, Yoonji said. She walked beside him, her boots crunching on the glass surface. It was the capital of our eastern territories. 20 billion people lived here. My family lived here. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. The Consortium tells its citizens this world was destroyed by a stellar event, a natural disaster. They built museums celebrating their discovery of the ruins. They sell tours to academics who want to study the mysterious dead civilization. She knelt and touched the ground. The Velith did this. Our most beloved students. The species we trusted most of all. They led the final assault on our people. When we tried to surrender, when we begged for mercy, they burned us anyway. Dohyun did not know what to say. He stood in silence as Yoonji picked up a handful of fused glass and let it fall through her fingers. My daughter was 3 years old when they came. Her name was Minjung. She liked to dance and sing and pick flowers from our garden. Yoonji's voice cracked. I do not know what happened to her. I was fighting on the front lines when the attack came. By the time I returned, there was nothing left. I am sorry. The words felt weak and useless, but Dohyun meant them with all his heart. I spent 600,000 years dreaming of revenge. Yoonji stood and faced him. 600,000 years, imagining what I would do to the species that murdered my child. And then you came, little brother. You and your Yuna, with your small ship and your big hearts, refusing to give up even when the whole galaxy looked down on you. What are you saying? I am saying that revenge would not bring Minjung back. Destroying the Consortium would not undo what they did to us. It would only prove that we are no better than they are. She reached out and took his hand. The First Kindred failed because we tried to be parents to the galaxy. Perhaps you can succeed by being something else. What else? Equals, partners, proof that humanity endures, no matter what. She squeezed his hand. I do not want revenge, Park Do-yeon. I want justice. I want the truth. And I want to see what the Second Kindred will become when they take their rightful place among the stars. Their communicators crackled. Yuna's voice came through, tense and urgent. We have a problem. Massive Consortium fleet just arrived. 50 capital ships, 100 support vessels. They are demanding our surrender. Yoonji looked at Do-yeon, and despite everything, she smiled. Then I suppose it is time to stop hiding. It is time to remind our children who we are. I bought a galactic cruiser. No one dare bid on what I found inside Rewrote Interstellar. History Part 5. The Return High Admiral Torek of the Velith had served in the Consortium Navy for 40 years. He had fought pirates and rebels and rogue species. He had commanded fleets that conquered star systems and crushed any challenge to Consortium authority. He was not a being who felt fear, until today, he stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion of Law, surrounded by the mightiest fleet the Consortium had assembled in a century. 50 capital ships, hundreds of support vessels, enough firepower to destroy entire civilizations, and none of it mattered. The 18 ancient ships before him were impossibly small compared to his fleet, but his sensors could not even measure their power output. His weapons could not lock onto them. His computers crashed every time they tried to analyze their technology. And then the transmission came. Every screen on his bridge flickered to show a human face. A woman in armor that seemed to glow with inner light, with eyes that looked older than the stars themselves. "My name is Shin Yunji, last general of the First Kindred." Her voice was calm and cold. "The species you call the Architects. The civilization you tried to erase from history 600,000 years ago." Torek's 4 arms gripped his command throne. "Impossible. The Architects are myths. Stories we tell to frighten children. We were never myths, Admiral. We were your parents, your teachers, your guardians." The woman's expression did not change. "And your ancestors murdered us for it." The transmission was broadcasting on every frequency, to every ship in the fleet. Torek could see the fear spreading through his officers like a virus. Ancient memories, buried deep in their genes, were waking up and screaming at them to run. "You have spent 600 millennia building your consortium on our graves," Unji continued. "You have lied to your children about what you did. You have treated our descendants, the humans of Earth, as primitive beings unworthy of respect. Today, that ends." Another face appeared beside hers on the screen. A small man in a cheap environment suit, looking terrified but determined. "This is Park Dohyun, representing the Second Kindred, the humans of Earth." His voice shook slightly, but he did not look away. "We are not here for revenge. We are not here to conquer. We are here to take our rightful place among the stars." "You have 1 hour," Yunji said. "Spread the truth of what happened to the Architects. Allow humanity to join the consortium as equals, not as lesser beings. Share our history with your children instead of burying it in lies. And if we refuse," Torek demanded. Yunji's eyes hardened. "We refused to fight our children once before. It cost us everything. I have spent 600,000 years reconsidering that choice." She paused. "Your fleet cannot hurt us, Admiral. Your weapons cannot touch us. Your technology is toys compared to what we possess. The only question is whether you want to learn from the mistakes of your ancestors or repeat them." The transmission ended. Silence filled the bridge. Torek looked at his officers, at their pale faces and shaking hands, and he thought of the stories his grandmother used to whisper to him when he was young. Stories about tall beings who came from the stars and taught the Velith to dream. Stories about ghost parents who loved their children, even as those children betrayed them. "Admiral?" His tactical officer's voice was barely above a whisper. "What are your orders?" Torek looked out at the ancient ships hanging in space before him. He thought about the power they represented, the technology that could crush his fleet without effort, the warriors inside who had every reason to want revenge. And then he thought about his own children, waiting at home, believing the lies he had been taught to tell them. "Stand down, all weapons," he said quietly. "Sir?" "Stand down." Torek released his grip on the throne and stood. "Open a channel to Consortium Command. Tell them the Architects have returned. Tell them we need to talk." The tension on the bridge shifted. Not relaxation, not yet, but something that might become hope if it was given room to grow. "Admiral?" Yunji's voice came through again, softer this time. "Tell them that we forgive them. What your ancestors did was terrible, but we do not want your children to pay for their sins. We only want the truth to be known and a chance to start again." Torek nodded slowly. "I will tell them." 1 year later, the Tree of New Soul was signed on the anniversary of the planet's destruction. They built a memorial on the surface. using the fused glass of the old capital to create a monument to the billions who had died. Representatives of every consortium species stood beside the awakened soldiers of the first kindred and the diplomats of Earth's second kindred. Do-hyun watched from the crowd, Yuna at his side. He was not a salvage dealer anymore. The consortium had given him the formal title of Discoverer of the Architects, and his face was known across the galaxy. He was not sure he liked the attention. Having regrets? Yoonji appeared beside him, dressed in ceremonial armor that gleamed in the light of foreign stars. Just thinking. A year ago, I was nobody. Just a human trying to survive in a galaxy that did not want us. Now I am watching history change. You changed it. She placed a hand on his shoulder. The first kindred had all the power in the galaxy, and we failed. We were too proud, too certain that we knew what was best for our children. You had nothing but curiosity and courage, and you succeeded where we could not. What lesson is that? That humanity's greatest strength was never technology or power. It was the refusal to stop walking into the dark, even when everything screamed at you to turn back. It was the willingness to buy a ship that terrified the entire galaxy, just because you wanted to know what was inside. The ceremony began. Leaders from 100 species spoke of truth and reconciliation and new beginnings. The soldiers of the first kindred shared their technology freely, just as they had promised. The humans of Earth took their place at the table as equals, no longer dismissed as primitives, but recognized as the twice-born children of the stars. And when it was over, when the speeches were done and the treaties were signed, Do-hyun stood alone on the glass surface of New Seoul and looked up at the sky. The stars were the same stars that his ancestors had once ruled. The same stars that had witnessed humanity's greatest fall and longest sleep. And now, at last, they were welcoming humanity home. Yoonji found him there an hour later. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "Everything. Nothing." He smiled slightly. "I am thinking about what comes next. We have our place among the stars now, but what do we do with it? How do we make sure this second chance matters? That is not a question I can answer." She stood beside him, looking up at the same stars. "The first kindred had our time. We built an empire, made our mistakes, and paid the price. Now it is your turn. The second kindred gets to decide what kind of civilization humanity will become. That is terrifying." "Yes," she smiled, "but also wonderful. You have the chance to be better than we were, to learn from our failures, to build something that lasts not because it is powerful, but because it is good." Do-hyun nodded slowly. He thought about his father, the simple salvage dealer who had taught him to look for value in things others threw away. He thought about Yuna, who had followed him into the unknown without hesitation. He thought about all the humans on Earth who would wake up tomorrow in a galaxy that finally knew their true history. "We will try," he said. "That is all I can promise. We will try. That is all anyone can ask." Yoonji reached out and took his hand. "Welcome home, little brother. Welcome home." Above them, the stars burned with ancient light, waiting to see what humanity would do with its second chance. And Park Dun, salvage dealer turned herald of a lost civilization, stood on the graves of his ancestors and felt something he had not felt since he was a child. Hope that the galaxy was vast and old and full of wonders beyond counting. And humanity, twice born and unbreakable, was finally ready to explore it all.